Welcome to the Your Life, Your Brand podcast with myself, James Oliver. Please hit the follow or subscribe button. It would mean the absolute world to me. I'm joined by Brenden Kumarasamy. Brenden is the founder of MasterTalk. He coaches ambitious executives and entrepreneurs to become the top 1% communicators in their industry. He also has a popular YouTube channel called MasterTalk, with the goal of providing free access to communication tools for everyone in the world. So let's dive in. Hey Brenden, thanks for joining me.
Of course, James. Great to be on.
Look, I'm going to hand the stage straight over to you. Tell us how it all began and started at MasterTalk.
Yeah, absolutely, brother. So when I was in university, I went to business school and did these things called case competitions. Think of it like professional sports, but for nerds. So while other guys my age were playing like cricket or rugby or footy or some other sport, as I could tell, not really well equipped to do any of those things, I did presentations professionally. And what happened is as I got older in these weird case competition programs that I was doing, I started coaching communication to people who were younger than me, mostly for free back then. And the reason was because the people who were jumping into these programs, they wanted to know how to speak better so that they could go out there and win these competitions. But we didn't really have a communication coach. And by the way, I wasn't one either. I just started coaching them for fun to give them that skill set. But I accidentally became very proficient at teaching other people how to communicate ideas. So when I started working at IBM as a corporate employee, I had the idea for MasterTalk because I realized that a lot of the stuff that was in my head wasn't available online for free on the internet. So I literally took out a phone in my mother's basement and I just started sharing ideas about communication. And then 3 years later, it turned into what it is today.
So you mentioned the corporate ladder, working a stable job at IBM. Sat in your shoes, you had a calling for your idea, but one of the scariest decisions in an entrepreneur's life is taking the leap from a salary to the risk of zero income with just an idea. What was the moment for you? And when did you decide to make the move?
Yeah, I'm glad you asked me that. Not a lot of people do. Quitting my job was by far the hardest decision I've ever made in my life, James. Like second to none. And I'll explain why. The reason is because I was the only breadwinner in my family. I didn't grow up with a lot of money. So even me making, let's say 70, 80, 90 grand at IBM was a ton of money in my family. Like I literally retired my mother off of that salary because we live in a small city in Montreal. Our living expenses are really low. So me leaving my corporate job was actually a very big deal, even if it was at the end of the day pretty easy to replace now that I realize it a year and a half later. But my advice is actually very counterintuitive. I'll never tell people to take the leap. I actually have a very different opinion on this. I think statistically, most people shouldn't be entrepreneurs. So the advice I give is side hustle comfortably. So what does that mean? A lot of us have this stigma, James, around side hustling, which is like you're on this couch, you're eating beans, and your life is really miserable, which I think is really bizarre. I think the better thing to do is to acquire a high income skill or go into a job in the marketplace that actually funds your living style. And then with that money, then you have a new decision to make. So when I started making money at IBM, I realized that, you know what, I can actually live without this money. I just want my time back. But people are different. Most people will pick the money, to be honest. So a couple of things that I did, last point on this, is I did 3 things before I quit corporate. Number one is I actually replaced at least 50% of my income. So I made sure I had product market fit. People were buying my shit and people liked what I was doing. That was the first thing I did. The second thing is I had a year in savings. So even if I messed up as an entrepreneur, which is the biggest risk in entrepreneurship, is not knowing what you're doing, which is obvious, right? I made sure that I had a year in savings. So even if I made mistakes, it would cover me. And that year of savings really helped because I really didn't know what I was doing. Now I do, but back then, definitely didn't. And then the third piece is have a strong go-to-market strategy. Really start thinking about the business 3 years out, how this is going to look like if there's an actual opportunity. Can you actually provide for your family for the next 5-10 years? And of course, one of the things I did get lucky on, James, is my gift just happens to be highly monetizable. So a lot of people wanted to buy my coaching services, so I was able to build a business around it. But I don't recommend it for most people. I'd say make money on the side, and if you can't do your side hustle part-time, you won't be able to do it full-time, trust me.
I totally agree with that. I see so many people who are in their mid-30s trapped by the life the world expects them to have, with the mortgage, car loans and the salary, and they say they need that salary to enjoy life. I guess it just goes back to what are your key motivators?
Absolutely. And on top of that, because let me throw this to you because I think this will help. I do very well financially today, but I still live in my mother's basement. We have a $10,000 car. I have an $800 mortgage a month. Like, it's super lean. We stay very lean because I take almost no risk, even at this level. I could easily go live in some nice place, buy a fancy car, but that's the type, to your point, that's the type of lifestyle you need to live if you want to maximize your odds of success. I'm glad you mentioned that.
I think people see entrepreneurship as sexy. They think I get the money, cars, girls, and I can do whatever I want when I want. And actually, I believe you do get your freedom back, but you have to decide what freedom means to you. So many people miss the point of lowering their expenses to get their idea off the ground. So a question from me is, you took the leap, you've made the decision to leave the corporate world. What was the first thing you did to start building your brand on day one?
So I would say that the easy way to answer this question, James, is I didn't wait to leave my corporate job to build my brand. Okay, that's the real answer. So in the sense that I had built MasterTalk, the personal brand. I wasn't that great at business until maybe like a year and a half later. And most of that was because of my business partner. So I won't even take credit for that. He's double my age. He has a lot more experience than me. He taught me how to sell. He brought pretty much all of my clients. Okay, so I'll preface by saying that. But the other piece that I am good at is definitely brand. So when I started MasterTalk, I spent 2.5 years building up the YouTube channel before I even tried to quit my job. So what I would recommend people do is think about brand, because your employer isn't going to say anything about it. Most of the time, like 95% of the time, probably more, your employer doesn't care, unless the brand that you're building is damaging to the company's reputation, which is very rare. So most of the time, especially people listening to this show, since it's a lot more educational, I don't see much reputation damage for the company, so you won't have that much problem. In fact, most of the executives at IBM, I'm very good friends with. A lot of them became my clients, and they loved watching my YouTube videos when I was still a corporate employee. So that's the piece I would say. The other piece I would say about brand is the second you quit your job, you need to have already prepared your strategy for the year. That's how I think about it. So I'm a bit of an oddball, James, where I've actually written out my content on YouTube years in advance. We can get into that as to why that is. I'm not a big believer in trending content for YouTube. I'm actually a much bigger believer for evergreen. We'll talk about that a bit later. But the other piece was I knew LinkedIn was my biggest 80/20 and where most of my clients are. Right, this is my framework, which I'm sure you teach your clients too. Where are your clients? Where are they in social, and how do you build content around them so that you have the most organic reach and you reach it? Like, it's pretty simple. So LinkedIn, what I did is I actually wrote out a year's worth of, actually not years, I'm lying, 6-7 months is more accurate, ahead of schedule, so that when I landed out of corporate, I knew exactly what to do on day one.
Wow, preparation game is strong there. Years of content prepared and ready to go. I suppose the key takeaway for me was you built a buffer not only financially, but also in brand equity before you even took the leap. So to me, social media is the world's biggest stage, although this might be where we disagree, as you're the public speaking coach and have been on some massive stages. But ultimately, I believe it has never been easier for people to get in front of the masses. It's now the easiest it's ever been. You spoke about planning your content years in advance. And I'm not going to lie, I've worked with people who struggle to even get one day in front, let alone a year. So take me through the thought process.
Absolutely. And I doubt we'll disagree much on this show. I completely agree with you. Social media, even from the speaker guy, social media is the biggest stage in the world. It's just obvious at this point. So here's the principle that I want to start with, James. The biggest mistake that content creators make, whether they're business owners or whether they just want to create content to help people, is that they think about their personal brand in days, not decades. So they focus on the next hot thing. They go, oh, what's hot? Oh, TikTok, super hot. LinkedIn organic, dude, if you're not on LinkedIn, what are you doing with your life? And then in 6 months, it's the next hot thing, the next hot thing. Whereas I think one thing I do give myself credit, which I don't give much of, a lot of stuff was luck, but I would say there's a couple of things I give myself credit, James. And one of them is I was really intentional about which platform I chose to disseminate and distribute my educational content, because I thought about my personal brand for 10 years. So let me give you a specific example here. I looked at every social media, Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, Pinterest, Twitter, right, YouTube, podcasting, blogging, etc. And I just asked myself a simple question, okay? Out of everyone who's ever created content in my space or something similar in my space, so educational type content, Where have most people gained status or fame on a platform in a worldwide way? So if you look at the net number of people across all of the socials and ways of distributing content, the numbers change drastically. So I'll give you a super easy way of thinking about this. So let's say we take podcasting as a medium. Podcasting is great to attract an audience, but not a lot of people get famous off podcasting except if you know the medium. The only exception to that is like Joe Rogan. There's probably others, but if you take people like Lewis Howes, Jordan Harbinger, these are two great examples. Most people know them if they're in the medium, but outside of the medium, you kind of know them. And then eventually, as you go through each podcaster, there's a lot of people that you start mentioning that nobody really knows, like Christine Blackburn from Storyworthy, Rod Clea from the Lifetime Cash Flow Show. It's the biggest commercial real estate podcast in the world. I doubt anyone who's listening just even knows who the guy is. So we have a problem there for the brand that I wanted to build, right? It goes back to what your 10-year game is. And my game was to be the biggest star in the world in my industry so I could help billions of lives in my industry. So then you go to blog. Okay, Seth Godin, Tim Urban, and then you start to run out of names again. So you keep playing this game. You realize that when you get to YouTube, you can go forever. You could literally just keep going forever. PewDiePie, blah, 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 blah. And what's nice about YouTube as well, even if you don't control your audience, is that the second you hit 10,000 subscribers, even if that's nothing in the world, you have an automatic credibility and status that no other platform gives you at 10,000. If you have 10,000 downloads on a podcast, that's obviously way more effective for your business than YouTube. But YouTube, there's more flex. So if you go to a conference and you go have a YouTube channel, I don't have to sell people. I just tell people I have a YouTube channel, and 1 out of every 50 conversations becomes a client automatically. So that's why I intentionally went with YouTube. And the last piece, I know I'm a bit long-winded here, is thinking about that 10-year strategy, James. I asked myself, what is the minimal amount of content that I need to produce to maximize my results? What's my 80-20 on social? And what I realized from studying a lot of the greats in the educational space, if you do once a week for 10 years, you'll win. Once a week for 10 years. So automatically, when I came to that conclusion, I said, okay, if I produce 500 videos, give or take, over the next 10 years, and I don't miss a week like Charisma on Command as an example, I will win. That's it. So I just wrote 300 videos. Every single day, when I woke up in the morning, when I was in corporate, I just sat down, I wrote a 1,000-page essay. 1,000-word essay. That's crazy. 1,000 pages. 1,000-word essay. And I did that every day. So I batched all my content in advance because I knew that the only way I would lose this game is if I missed a week. Doesn't matter what the trends are. If I miss a week, I'll lose. But if I keep going, and it seems my thesis has panned out, I keep going for the next 10 years. Remember, James, I'll be 35 years old in 10 years. I won't be 50. Right? And I already have 21K. So if I just keep playing at this game, I'll definitely win.
So many people say content is king, but I'll have to disagree with that and say consistency is king. Consistent content wins every time, and it's as simple as that. And you're singing from exactly the same hymn sheet as I am. Everyone wants the next hot thing, the vanity metrics, but what has that actually brought them? So with social media, you've committed the time to it and doubled down on your consistency. I'm interested to see how other creators develop over the next 5 or 10 years with the addition of short form in the social media revolution. How have you seen social media impact the growth of your business?
Absolutely, brother. You know, the way that I see it, you bring up such great points, is like, for me, social is all about bridging the gap between the greatest challenge we have in the online industry, whether you're selling products or services. And the biggest challenge online is bridging trust. Okay, I got this from Yuri Alkiam, who's a multi-7-figure business coach for healthpreneurs. And I love what Yuri talks about because that's the truth. So everything that you do in life, especially on social or even in business, when you're going to a networking cocktail, you're building a relationship, your goal is to bridge trust in the fastest possible time. And the reason fastest possible time is important here is because there's other competitors in your space. So I'll give you the perfect example of how social has built my business, and it has nothing to do with follower count. It has everything to do with conversations. So let's say somebody reaches out on LinkedIn and they're looking for a communication coach. And let's say I'm on that list. Okay, so it's me and like, I don't know, 3-4 other people. I'm almost always the only person with a dedicated YouTube channel. So what happens is when they reach out to me, they go, hey, what about your services? What do you do? Most people, when they get a message like that, they go immediately to, here's my program, here's my offer, here's how much it costs. Do you want to get on a call? Let me talk to you about it. And wrong approach. I always respond with, hey, James, I want to make sure I serve you. What's your biggest challenge right now? It's communication. And then the person says, X, I need to speak better in meetings, blah, blah, blah. I have a video on every single question because I've already asked my clients every possible question that could ever get asked on communication. Obviously, there's more, but I've done a lot of the bulk work. So I literally respond with, here's an 8-minute video of me pitching nothing. Watch it and let me know what you think of it. They watch it. So let's say we're comparing me to other competitors right now. Other competitors are trying to sell them right away. Wrong approach. I built a relationship immediately with that 8-minute video. And it cost me $0 in time. $0. I literally look at the text, and I'm doing this with 50 other people that day. So I'm building a strong relationship with that person without trading a second or like a few seconds probably of my time. And those people who actually want to buy the service will almost always pick me.
Brenden, you've truly embodied the add value approach to relationship building. What I find interesting is public speaking is the old social currency. It's the one-to-many approach, which has now been amplified by the power of social media. For me, I'm seeing people having the fear of speaking to the camera as much as they used to have of standing up on stage and presenting. I'm interested to hear your thoughts on this.
Absolutely. I definitely get a lot of struggles on how do I present on camera. I don't want to do it. I'm nervous. So definitely the same conversations that we're both having with each other's client base. And the way that I would approach this is I would think about the long-term vision. Like for me, I'm a bit different than most business owners, because most people who might be listening to this show are business owners who happen to have social media presence, whereas I'm the opposite. I'm a media guy who happens to have a business, right? So I'm the other way around. And the reason I guess I was effective in this game is because I never did it to start a business. I did it because I really wanted to share free information. And you know that because I know you've seen a couple of the videos. My goal is really to democratize this entire thing. Similar like Gary Vee just wants to share everything for free, whether it comes back to him or not. I was the same way. I want to make sure that after I'm dead, all of these videos stay on. And I think what I realized, James, is that if I want to really immortalize my ideas, my thought leadership, what I care about, video is the best way to do it. And it's because it's the easiest way, going back to bridging trust online, it's the easiest way to build a rapport with someone. Podcasting is great too, but we're even realizing a lot of podcasters are starting to go into video podcasts because they're realizing that even if they're building great trust with their audience, like you have with yours, there's another level for them to reach for, which is building that same trust long-term, but then doing it through video. And this is why people like Joe Rogan, Lewis Howes is a great example as well of two individuals off the top of my head who pioneered video podcasting the earliest of days and have benefited from it tremendously. That's why Lewis is very well known in the normal edge of things, because a lot of people are discovering him through platforms like YouTube now, which is a new distribution channel from Andrew Huberbrand is another example too I could name in the podcasting space. But I think the overlying theme here is when we think about video, we need to focus on what is our long-term vision for our ideas, regardless if we make money. What is the type of content that I would make even if I wouldn't generate any money? And it might not be related to our business at the beginning, but the key that I'm trying to drive here is an incentive for you to produce content to begin with. And once you find that incentive, it's going to be a lot easier to share your ideas. So that would be the first piece I would think about, is what is the long-term piece of how your content is going to influence people. Like I'm super excited about the 15-year-old girl right now who can't afford my coaching services, but is watching my stuff and is probably going to be the next Elon Musk in 15 years. And she'll probably thank me in 15 when she sees me. Right. So that's the one piece. I'm super excited about that vision. The other piece is think about the easiest wins. So when I coach clients on this, so people can just apply this, I actually don't recommend and I don't push them to post videos in a public fashion if they're that introverted, because a lot of the people that I work with are super introverted and shy. So what I have them do instead is I do like a little group. So they're all in a group together and I make them send videos to each other. So there's a lot less friction. So I say something like, let's say you're there. Let's say it's me, you, and John. So I say, okay, John, I want you to send a video to James right now on this call. So I don't make them do it on their own, or else they don't do it. And I go, send a video to James right now. And all you're going to do in that video is you're going to say one thing you learned from it, one thing you appreciate about it. So like, oh, that's easy. And then I go, James, you do the same thing with John. So they're working that muscle. I'm forcing them to go to the gym a little bit. And then what happens is and then I go, spend 5 minutes watching each other's videos. How did that make you feel? And then you might say something like, oh, Brenden, oh, wow, that made me feel really good. Like I'm impacting people with these. And then I go, okay, now what you're going to do, James, is now you got a list of 100 clients. I want you to send a 30-second video to each of your 100 clients. Go. And then you're going to do that. And then you're invincible on video.
I love that. It's about building the muscle, just like going to the gym. So I guess for me, I've got a question for you. Have you always enjoyed speaking to an audience? Or was there a moment in your life where you just knew you had to get better at it?
Yeah, most of my life I actually hated speaking. And the reason is because I'm based in Montreal in Canada. And for those who don't know, the reason that's important is because most people in my city speak French, not English. So when I was 5 years old, my parents looked at me and they said, hey, you need to learn how to speak French, Brenden. So we're going to send you to French school. Of course, super grateful for the decision that my parents made, James. But one problem, I didn't know the language. So every presentation I gave, not only was I scared of presenting, I presented in a language I did not know. So it was super challenging as a kid. And those nerves stayed with me for a long time. You think that's the stop of it. I mean, when I got to university, I had a bachelor's degree in accountancy. I'm not a communications major. I did literally the opposite of what a communication pro would do, which is accounting. So I was an accountant who grew up speaking his second language his whole life. So yeah, I don't really like speaking that much. The only reason I started liking it like 6 years ago, because I really wanted to win these competitions in presentation, because I'm really competitive. And that's how I got really good at speaking. But before that, I sucked.
Amazing. You touched on this earlier about nerves were a factor for you speaking, albeit it was in a second language. I resonate with that like 100%. I get nerves before presenting, recording podcasts, or anything kind of like putting myself out there. It's the wave of, why are you doing this? You don't know what you're doing. And I kind of get myself in a feedback loop. I then have to kind of break state and just go for it. And from that moment, I literally love doing it. What would you kind of advise for anyone that struggles the same ways that I do of how to deal with those kind of nerves?
Absolutely, brother. And by the way, I think you're actually the example for us to follow because you actually embodied how to overcome the fear of public. So I'll use you as an example. So the way that I think about it is communication, especially fear, is like a boxing match. So one side of the ring is the fear, right? The anxiety, the social pressure. Oh my God, why am I doing this? Why am I here? And I've had a lot of that. I mean, I'm probably the king of this. I started coaching CEOs when I was 22. So that sounds cool when I say it always, but it's not that cool. Like a lot of people worked in their companies long as I was alive. It was super hard for me to get credibility early in my career. So I was super nervous every time I was coaching execs. So one side of the ring is the fear. The other side of the ring is the message, right? To your point, why am I sharing this message? Why am I here? Why do I need to break through this? But the point I want to drive here, James, is you cannot remove your fear of communication. I think that's a false expectation. And I'll give you the best example with me. I'm the supposed expert in communication on this call right now. But if we were talking, let's say we're having coffee, and Elon Musk calls me and he goes, hey, I've been surrounded speaking for many years. Can you just come coach me tomorrow? I would shit my pants. Totally. What, am I just going to come up to you and you're like, yeah, it's just another day. It's just Elon. Like, no. Like, it's like, oh my God. Like, there's always a level for all of us that we're frightened by, that we're afraid of. That's normal. The goal in that boxing match is not to remove the fear, but rather to make sure that when your message and your fear meet in the middle of that ring, that your message wins the match, that your message gets the knockout punch. That's the goal. So for me, why did I start MasterTalk in my mother's basement on executive communication tips at the age of 22? Who in the world am I to share this information with the world? So I didn't want to do it. I had every excuse in the book not to do it, James. Every single one. I'm already working a great job at IB. If I work here for 5 more years, I'll be a super level executive. I'll make multiple sets with no risk. I never have to do this YouTube thing. And people won't flag me for it. So why did I press record? The reason I pressed record was because of the 14-year-old girl who can't afford a communication coach. Who else does she have? I'm the only communication coach in the early 20s who has executive experience. And I'm the only one who creates YouTube videos on the subject at scale, at the consistency I've done. I haven't missed a week in 3 years on YouTube. So if she doesn't have me, who else does she have? And the only alternative that you have is some like 50-year-old white dude who doesn't know anything about communication, public speaking, to be frank. So the point I want to drive is when I thought about that person, and put anyone there, 15-year-old boy in London, it doesn't matter. I realized that the only people they had was me. So I had a very difficult decision to make when I realized that. Do I live in the fear and I just go, screw it, like I'll just look stupid, which I did by the way for the first year? Or do I make the decision and say, you know what, I'm scared shitless right now, but those kids need me, so I'm gonna figure this shit out. And then later in business, when I quit corporate, I said, you know what? I'm not 100% sure if I'm going to monetize this fully, but I need to get more revenue from execs because I need that revenue to actually make better YouTube videos for people who don't have the money like I did it 7 years ago. So I had a very strong motivation, and that's how I've made it this far so quickly.
Wow, I really just want to pause and circle back to something you've just said about being flagged online and even when you're adding value. I think it's just a trait of social media. And I'm sure none of your clients have ever said to you, I've stood up to do a presentation, whether it be on stage or at work, and John from accounts called me a dick right in the middle of it. I guess it's just one of those fears that you don't know what everyone's thinking about you in the room. So how are you able to get over that?
Yeah, man, the classic question. So the advice I would share, which ties really well into another piece on personal branding that I forgot to talk about today, is the idea that too many people focus on follower count and they don't focus enough on conversations. It's not about 1,000 followers. It's about having 1,000 conversations like this. This is how you build raving fan bases. Sitting down with James for 45 minutes, having a real conversation, giving and over delivering thousands and thousands of times over. That's what you want. You don't want 10,000 people who sort of like you. You want 100 people who really, really love you, right? And podcasting is the medium to do that because you can actually have that real conversation. People actually feel who you are. And this applies really well into the question that you asked, which is, what do you do about haters? So I have a couple of thoughts on this. The first thing that I'll say is if you have haters, that's actually a really good thing. And I'll explain why. I found it very bizarre that people started hating my work, like me. Like I don't swear at all. Like other people, like maybe Gary Vee. Yeah, sure. You want to yell at that? I love him personally. I'm a big fan of his work. Lots of respect for the guy. But I get it. Some people might not like him because he's loud and he's a bit crazy. But me, like I'm a dude in a suit. Like I'm super like well dressed. I'm professional. I don't swear at all. I think about my content really well. I'm not doing anything. I barely say anything controversial. If I do, I at least justify it. So like people hating my work was a really bizarre experience for me. Let me start there. But I think what I realized is that the more haters you have, it's actually a really good indicator that you're becoming more successful. Because if you don't have any haters, it means you're not doing something worth doing, which means you probably don't have any followers, you're probably just getting started. Like when I started MasterTalk, like my first 1,000 subscribers, I didn't have a single hater because those 1,000 people I knew. They're people in my network. But then as the brand started scaling, random people started commenting different things on my socials. So I realized that, oh crap, like this sucks. But I also realized it means the thing I was doing was working. So realize that if you're getting haters, it's actually a ding. It's actually a really good thing. It means you're doing something important with your life. So keep doing it. But the other piece that I would drive with haters is always stay focused on the people that you're serving. This is actually something very few content creators do that is simple but not easy. And the tip is have dinner with the people you want to serve. Like actual dinner. I don't mean like a virtual Zoom call. Now I can say that now that COVID's kind of winding down. I used to get flagged for saying this before. So like, what about COVID? Like that's done. Okay, it's kind of finishing up. Have dinner with the people you want to serve. Like when I say 14-year-old girl, I don't say that like in my imagination. I know who the girl is. I do it pro bono every year, so I can meet her every single year. So there's this one organization I do pro bono work for in Montreal. And the reason I do it for free every year is because, giving back. But the other piece is it's a constant selfish reminder for me as to why I exist in the world. because I feel their nerves. I see them. I have breakfast with them. I talk to them. I get to know them. I know who they are by name. I know what grade they're in. I know what they care about. Right. So that's the piece. So when you have those conversations, you worry less about the haters and you worry more about the person you're actually trying to help. So I am better off spending 45 minutes of my life talking to someone who really believes in the work I'm doing, like you, and really making sure I'm over delivering for your audience, because I know how much you care based on the questions you're asking, versus using that same exact energy trying to convince someone like a university professor, right, to watch my videos. I sent thousands of emails. I actually sent tens of thousands. I was really stubborn and stupid back then. I sent tens of thousands of emails to these university professors, and I said, hey, I'm making no pitch, no client. I'm making free videos for students. As growing up as a student, I didn't have these resources. Can you share them? All of them spat in my face, James. All of them. They said, first of all, don't call me by my first name. I was like, what in the world is this? Right? So anyways, bottom line, dude, I would say don't give your haters oxygen so that they don't breathe. That's the piece I would give. And realize that every moment you spend on the person that doesn't want you to serve them or doesn't care about your doom, realize there's 99 other people who are waiting for you. So don't keep them waiting.
Amazing advice there. So just to start wrapping this up, if you could only give one bit of advice on public speaking or communication to that 14-year-old boy or girl, what would it be?
It would be a question. And the question is, how would your life change if you were an exceptional communicator? You know, the biggest flack I have with my industry is that they're too focused on negativity, the stress, the fear, the anxiety around speaking. I'm sure you've noticed that in our interview, I rarely talk about that stuff. I'm really focused on the positive because most of us don't focus on it. You know, the reason all of us suck at communication is not because of us. It's not because we have a problem. It's because the education system that we brought up taught us that communication is a tool. Every presentation you gave was mandatory. Every presentation you gave was different. So you didn't get the chance to practice one presentation over and over again because you're stressed about making your history presentation, your math presentation. And every presentation is tied to a punishment, dude. Like, it's a punishment. If you don't do well, you get slacked on your grades. You get like a 30% reduction in your mark. Not a fun environment to learn. So instead, what I get people to think about, whether they're 14 years old or 50 years old, is they go, how would your life change? And for everyone, it's different. For somebody like you, it might be being a better you're already a great host, but even better, right? Okay, reaching more lives, impacting more lives. For a 14-year-old girl, it might be to get a great grade on a test, to show off to their parents how great job they did with something at work, or not work, but at school. And for somebody who's 50, it might be a better relationship with their wife. We all have our reasons. So the point to this question, how would the world change? How would your life change if you're an exceptional communicator? Will start to help you dream about who you want to be as a communicator, not just the vacation you want to go on this month. And through that dream state, you'll get a lot more excited about mastering communication, which I think is the biggest lack in our industry right now.
Thank you so much for that, Brenden. And finally, I've spent some time on your YouTube channel and I can vouch that the content is amazing. Where can the listeners find you online or reach out to you?
Absolutely, brother Ben. What a wonderful conversation. Thanks for having me. So definitely two ways to keep in touch. The first one is definitely the YouTube channel, right? You can type MasterTalk in one word and you'll find me there on YouTube. And then the second way, for those of you who are interested in coaching, come to one of my free live interactive Zoom calls. I do a free training every 3 weeks. So you can register for that at rockstarcommunicator.com. It's not a recorded webinar. It's live. It's interactive. And I coach people for free on that call. So I hope to see you there.